This works too. I don't know if there's a view here.
Is the camp in Maine still?
All right, our next presenter is longtime club member Jim Hendrickson. I'm not used to seeing you actually not holding a camera, but I think it's great. We're going to get some eclipse doings, and so please let's give a warm AstroAssembly welcome.
Thanks. Well, I wanted to put together a sort of a little visual of an eclipse strip, but it almost turned out to be not an eclipse strip because, as you'll see in a minute, we choose to go to the shadow of the moon because of the place we ended up going. So we've probably all seen this. We probably all looked at this about a year-ish ago when we tried to figure out where we wanted to go to see the eclipse. It's a meteorological statistical map of what percentage of cloudy or clear sky you're likely to get anywhere along the eclipse path. So this is the cloud percentage, and it basically tells us that we should probably go here, but not there. And as you'll probably see in the next presentation, this didn't really work out in our favor, but there is a positive side to it. So the idea was, let's go to Texas because that's where we're most likely to have clear sky. And there's a whole bunch of neat stuff to go see down there also. So the destination was San Antonio. San Antonio, its proper was not in the eclipse path, but just to the northwest of it was. And it's also only about 3 hours from Houston, which there's a lot of neat stuff to go see over there. I wanted to put a lot of San Antonio stuff in here, but there was just too much of it. So this was our last view of, I can really barely see it, the moon. Last view of the moon pre-eclipse on the trip out. And yeah, if you're gonna fly somewhere, go during sunrise or sunset because it's really neat to look out the window at that stuff. So we get to San Antonio. We had a couple of days of sightseeing beforehand, and the clear sky chart looked like this, like the whole time we were there. But fortunately, one of the days we were down in the cavern, so I didn't get sunburned because the sky did not do what that said it was going to do the 2 days prior to the eclipse. So I said, well, if the clear sky chart is going to look like this again for eclipse day, we should be good because it's wrong and we're going to get sunny skies. So heading out to a little place called Verney, which is about 45 minutes northwest of San Antonio. Well, there's our cloud map. It doesn't look too daunting, but turns out that little patch of cloud is kind of stubborn. So we get to Eclipse Site, which is a little boutique shop that was holding an eclipse fair and little vendor market and all that, and they had some local meteorologists and a couple of local astronomers there to do sort of a star party setup, kind of like the stuff we do. It's a couple minutes off the highway, so it only took about 45 minutes to get there. Eclipse traffic was practically non-existent, so that was kind of nice. And the sky looked like this. But so if the sun rises above this stuff, we should be pretty good. We should be able to see it through that. But it just got thicker and thicker and thicker. And it looked like that. I think this was during the actual eclipse was going on when I took this shot, so that's kind of what it looked like.
Hey, Jim?
Yes?
Jim, could you move a little bit closer to the microphone?
Sure.
Yeah, you got to speak up.
Thank you.
So I did get, that was my best eclipse picture. We got a little bit of a break in after I get about 90% or so. That's, it did clear up for about 10 seconds during totality. I say clear up. We could see the corona naked eye, and it was pretty, through a little spot in the cloud that was kind of like that. So this is the best totality picture. I may as well take a picture of what's going on the ground because most people don't think to say their eclipse experience is kind of this. So it was a pretty good turnout at this place, but as you can see, it's dark. It's not night. It's actually totality. So everybody had a good time anyway. We did get to see roughly 10 seconds of it. So eclipse being over, I actually spent another 3 or 4 days, Francine, in Houston, in San Antonio. Lots and lots and lots of stuff to do there. So that's definitely a cool place to go visit, the San Antonio Missions, the Alamo. There's great restaurants there. There's the little River Walk area. Yeah, and the weather was great the whole rest of the time we were there. So, but since we're finishing off San Antonio, time to go to Houston. I don't know if anybody recognizes this. I wouldn't have if you showed this to me 6 months ago. It's Rice University. It's why would this be on a place that tourists from Rhode Island would go? Because something happened at the far end of this campus that's kind of notable that I think everybody here in this room would have, most people knew about. So, and this is only about a 40 or so minute walk from the hotel we were at in downtown Houston, or the museum district, Houston, I should say. So this is the Fordham Library on the campus. And they have this little gallery set up here because there's some notable stuff happened here, particularly kind of a speech that sent us off to the moon. And that happened on September 12th, 1962. John F. Kennedy was inside this stadium. This is Rice Stadium, giving the "We choose to go to the moon" speech. So I said, well, I'm going to be not more than a half-hour walk away from this. We got to go see it. So it's interesting that it was built in 1950. It's still there. It's amazing that they actually use stadiums that are that old, where we like to knock ours down after 20, 30 years. Unfortunately, there was nothing going on there, but they also didn't have any visitation. We couldn't actually go in there and go visit the space where it happened. Just being able to look at it from the outside was pretty neat. And they have a second generation moon tree on Apollo 14. They brought a bunch of seeds on the Apollo spacecraft, brought them back to the Earth, and they plant them all around the country. This was a graft from I forget which one, but there was one that has been growing here for 3 or 4 years and doing pretty well. And it's a pretty nice setting there. And they have the little plaque that indicates, this is where the moon speech was given. And they have a replica of the podium where you can pretend you're going to say, hey, let's go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. So, and if you're familiar with the speech, the little "we choose to go to the moon" part is this. There's a whole lot more to it, which I didn't realize there was that much. It's like, I'm not going to be able to read the tiny pixels on the screen there, but that's that. Let's see. I think there was there's the, I didn't have, they had a moon rock also in there. And several people who are active in NASA now, as well as veteran astronauts and administrators, have connections to Rice University. So I thought I had that slide in there, but not just the time. So anyway, across town, this is the Johnson Space Center. This is the actual podium where the speech was given about the going to the moon. And there was nothing indicating so, but there's a copy of the speech in the podium. I don't know if that was the actual one or if it's just a copy of it. It would be interesting to think if it was the one, but I really don't know. Yeah, probably a replica because the other one's in it. So on the other side of Mission Control Houston, part of the Johnson Space Center, is they offer tours besides the visitor center. You can go and see various parts of the complex, including the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, the Mission Control Center. There's a whole rocket farm there. So part of the extra tours is you can go see the Mission Control Center. There's actually a couple of different ones. We ended up on the historic one, but the one that you can actually see the active one, that was all booked up, so I wasn't able to get into it. So we walk into this pretty interesting looking building here. I've probably seen a picture from the outside, but I don't recognize that's what it was until we got to it. So we get inside, and the tour guide says, we're going to climb 82 steps to go to see Mission Control. And I'm thinking, I thought he was joking at first. It's like, there's no way there's 82 steps inside this building, but sure enough, they were. Because apparently the Mission Control Center the Mission Control Room itself is on like the 3rd or whatever floor. So we get up there and we're presented with this as soon as you walk in. And it looks like an active Mission Control Room, but this is the actual room, and it's fully restored. About 5 years ago, they redid everything to make it back to Apollo era, because like I said, it's been in disrepair for a good number of years. This is where all the mission control took place for all the Apollo missions and some of the early space shuttle flights. But it had been in disrepair, and they said, well, we should redo this for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission and then reopen it to the public. So that's what they did. And when we went in there, they said, you guys should be, make sure you be quiet when you're in here, because the actual Mission Control Space Station Flight Operations Center is right below us. So I guess, like no hooping and hollering when they actually do the recreations of the the lunar events. Which, that's interesting, is this just looks like a static image, but it really isn't. They set up a little diorama and all this stuff in here is animated. These screens are showing, they showed us the, they replicated what would have been like in mission control during the moon landing itself. They showed what Neil taking his first step, and then there was a third one when they showed us when they returned to Earth. So obviously there's no one in the room, but all these screens were active. Some of these things were blinking on and off and whatnot. And you also notice the mission control looks quite a lot different from what we see today. There's a lot more paper. There's you know, old rotary telephones. There's all these old filing cabinets, copious amounts of coffee cups and cigarette butts and ashtrays. So it's a lot of that stuff you're not going to see in today's mission control. They just have a lot of paper, but they usually keep them organized in binders and they don't have too many of them out all the time. And another angle of it, I like this view because you can see all the Apollo mission patches there. It was kind of dark in this, so I didn't get that too many great pictures of it. But again, here's where the animation went. You see the TV image of Neil walking down the ladder to take the first step. There's a little the moon map they have going on, and there's actually a video on YouTube that you can go to look at how the screen technology in these things worked. If you look up FranLab, Apollo mission control display technology or something like that, and it does like a half-an-hour video that just explains the fascinating technology behind all that. Again, here's a close-up of what the consoles would look like. I couldn't tell if this was a CRT or if they just stuck an LCD screen in there. I like to think it was an original CRT, but it might not be. But the effect is really do it. They had us up in there for half an hour looking at this experience, and they also had a TV in the corner that showed the Walter Cronkite rebroadcast, and it definitely worth a visit. I'd definitely go down and see that. So outside of the mission control, we took the little tram around, rode around the back side of or actually more toward the visitor center side of it. They had a little rocket garden there. We didn't have a chance to go in there and see it, but you can see most of it from the outside. This kind of unassuming thing doesn't really look like much, but it's actually one of the test rockets for when they fired the emergency escape system on the Apollo command module, that little rocket there. So this thing would shoot it off to 20,000 feet in the sky, and then they'd shoot this thing off to make sure that the astronauts could get away should the Saturn V have had a problem. Fortunately, we never had a Saturn V have one of those problems, but these tests all went well, and they still have one of these old. There's also, for those who went to New Mexico, they have one there too. It's called the Little Joe too, if you're interested in what that is. And then walk around the corner. Gee, I wonder what's in this box.
Yeah.
It's pretty big, whatever it is. So I'd never seen one of these up close, and I was not prepared for it. What the view of this thing looked like. And you can stand like right there underneath this, and it's hard to get the sense of scale here. You just got to go down there and see it. And they got one in Florida too. Which
I've been to that one.
I should go visit that one sometime too. So yeah, that's the and also in New Mexico, they have one of these on the ground. One of the F1 engines, you can walk up to it, walk all around it. It's just enormous. They don't make anything like that anymore, fortunately. But so it was the Saturn first stage. This is the second stage. Again, it's still enormous. It's smaller engines, but it's just giant. And just to think, imagine what it must have been like to watch one of these things fly. None of these things have flown in my lifetime either. So it's going pretty historic for me. Here's the third stage. You know, this part never came back to Earth. They're all either crashed into the moon or still floating out there. And Skylab was made out of one of these, which I still find that fascinating. Skylab was in space when I was born, so at least part of this legacy is in my lifetime. And again, this is the entire rocket stack, and you really can't get the impression of how big this is by a picture. And also, yeah, that whole thing went up. Only this part came back. So, and that was just
looks like it was used.
Yeah, that was I don't think that was part of one of the manned flights. Yeah, it might have been from one of the early test flights. I mean, there was a whole bunch of placards around that told you everything, but they said when they brought us in there, he said, you have 7 minutes in here to go take all the pictures and whatever you want, and in 7 minutes disappeared in like 7 seconds, so there wasn't a lot of time to look at everything. So, but they do have the Apollo 17, the actual flown Apollo 17 command module within the visitor center. So it's, again, that giant rocket, and that was the only thing that came back. This is a mock-up of the, or simulator of the lunar module. They have one of these at the Museum of Science. They've had that since I was a kid, so it's, that you don't have to go all the way to Houston to see one of these. It's pretty neat. And then, of course, what else are you gonna have in a museum where they send people to the moon? Moon rocks. And these things are massive. I think these are inch cubes, not centimeter cubes, because these things were pretty large. And they had quite a few samples. I had pictures of all the placards of all that too, but I didn't have time to stick them all in here. And then they have a little kiosk where you can actually touch one of the moon rocks. So I'm sure we've all done that before. People have moon rocks and different museums and stuff do these. So, and then this is sort of a segue into, we had been to the moon, now we're talking about going back to the moon, and the process is pretty long and complicated, but we have hardware here. This is a mock-up of the Orion capsule at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. So at some point they were throwing this in the pool to test things. It's still sitting here to do. I'm not sure if they have active testing going on, but there's a complete mock-up of the US segment of the space
picture
station.
has the door off on the capsule. Did the door fall off? And
Yeah, well, I guess whatever testing they were doing, they didn't need it. So, and yeah, it's just, again, this is just a massive facility. No, that's Lockheed that makes that, isn't it?
Boeing.
Boeing, is it? No, I think Boeing makes the rocket.
Well,
I don't know. It's been a while since I read up on it, so, because it's been there for a while. So, and then another piece of hardware, this is a Shuttle Legacy, an engine from the space shuttle, but this is a variant of this is being used on the SLS rocket. They're using 4 of them on the rocket, so they have one you can walk up to, and that, again, it's more impressive to see it in person than in a picture. So, and I figured that this was part of our tour in the space flight operations center. You get to train on the toilet. This I guess this is the space shuttle era toilet, though they don't use that model anymore, but they have it in there. So
your face
So the-
looks a little flush.
so the visitors, yeah. Well, I mean, we were on the tram all day, so it's like you get what you got. And then we got to meet Hans Schlegel, who's one of the astronauts who does regular public appearances. He flew on the space shuttle mission that put the Columbus module on the International Space Station. So it was pretty neat getting to talk to him about his experiences there. And there's so much more I wanted to put in here, but I wanted to try to keep it as short as I could. So this was the end of the San Antonio part of the trip anyway. Again, it's the first time we saw the moon since the eclipse. Too bad it wasn't that clear during eclipse day. And then one last thing here. Yeah. Having properly been to Texas, not just a drive-through of a little piece of it, they say, everything's bigger than Texas. Having been there, I can tell you that's not true. This is the San Antonio River. And anybody that's been to water fire can tell you, I don't think you can do a water fire in here. It's just not big enough. So, that's it.